They say home is where the heart is. But what happens when you come home and your heart has been ripped out and thrown away? What happens when the person you trusted most in this world, the person you fought for, bled for, nearly died for, has already moved on without you? Let me ask you something. Have you ever loved someone so much that you were willing to die for them? Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you handed them your entire life, your entire future, your entire heart, and said, "Take care of this while I'm gone"? I have, and I learned the hard way that some people aren't worthy of that kind of trust. My name is Michael Rodriguez. I'm 28 years old, Staff Sergeant, United States Army. 2 tours in Iraq, Bronze Star recipient, Purple Heart winner. A man who believed in God, country, and the woman I married. But let me tell you what those titles really mean. Staff Sergeant means I was responsible for other men's lives. Bronze Star means I risked my life for strangers. Purple Heart means I bled for people I'd never met. And husband? Well, husband means I was the biggest fool who ever put on a uniform. I believed in the American dream. I believed that if you serve your country with honor, if you sacrifice everything for freedom, if you put your life on the line for strangers, then the people you love will be there when you come home. Think about that for a moment. Think about what it means to believe in something that completely. I believed that love conquers all. I believed that commitment means something. I believed that when you make promises to someone, you keep them no matter what. I was wrong about everything. On March 15th, 2019, I returned from my second deployment to Iraq. 18 months of hell. 18 months of watching friends die. 18 months of wondering if today would be the day I didn't make it home. But I survived. I survived IEDs that could turn a Humvee into twisted metal. I survived sniper fire from rooftops in Fallujah. I survived roadside bombs that sent shrapnel through my shoulder and leg. I survived all of that because I had something to come home to. Or at least, I thought I did. But here's what I didn't survive. I didn't survive what I found in my own home. I didn't survive the betrayal that was waiting for me in the place where I should have felt safest. I didn't survive the discovery that while I was fighting a war overseas, my wife was waging her own war against our marriage back home. What happened next shattered everything I believed about love, loyalty, and the country I had served. This is my story. This is the story of a man who gave everything for America, only to discover that America had already taken everything from him. Let me paint you a picture of who I was before this happened. Picture a young man, full of hope, full of dreams, full of love for his country and his wife. Picture someone who believed that good things happen to good people, that hard work pays off, that sacrifice means something. Picture someone naive enough to think that love is enough to overcome anything. Picture someone stupid enough to believe that when a woman says, "I'll wait for you," she actually means it. That was me. That was Michael Rodriguez before March 15th, 2019. Before the day my life ended and something else began. Something darker, angrier, more broken than I ever thought I could become. This is the day my life ended. Let me take you back to the beginning. Let me tell you about the boy who believed in fairy tales and the girl who taught him that fairy tales are just lies we tell ourselves to make reality bearable. I grew up in El Paso, Texas. If you've never been to El Paso, let me paint you a picture. It's hot, it's dusty, and it's full of people who work twice as hard as everyone else just to get half as much. The kind of place where the American dream feels both impossible and absolutely necessary at the same time. My father was a construction worker who came home every night with calloused hands and a sore back. Every single day for 30 years he woke up at 5 in the morning, put on his work boots, and went out to build other people's dreams while struggling to afford his own. My mother cleaned houses for rich families on the west side of town. She scrubbed their toilets and washed their dishes and organized their closets so she could put food on our table and clothes on our backs. She worked for people who had more money in their jewelry boxes than my family made in a year. But here's the thing about my parents. They never complained, never felt sorry for themselves, never blamed anyone else for their circumstances. They just worked harder than humanly possible and believed that their sacrifice would mean something for their children. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And we had something else that kept us going through the 100-degree summers and the long days of back-breaking work. We had the American dream. Now, I know that sounds corny. I know the American dream is something people make jokes about these days. Rich politicians and celebrities who were born on third base, talking about how anyone can make it if they just try hard enough. But when you grow up poor, when you watch your parents sacrifice everything for their children, when you see what's possible in this country if you're willing to bleed for it. My dad used to tell me something I'll never forget. He'd come home from work, covered in concrete dust, his hands bleeding from handling rebar all day. And he'd look at me doing my homework at our kitchen table, and he'd say, "Mijo, in America, it doesn't matter where you start. It matters how hard you're willing to work." He came here from Mexico with nothing but calloused hands and a burning desire to give his children a better life than he'd had. He believed that if he worked hard enough, if he sacrificed enough, if he never gave up, his children would have opportunities he never dreamed of. And you know what? He was right. Sort of. I did get opportunities he never had. I just made all the wrong choices about how to use them. Let me tell you about the opportunities I had. I was good at school. Really good. Not just good grades, but actually smart. The kind of smart that teachers notice and nurture and believe in. I could solve math problems that made other kids cry. I could write essays that made teachers smile. I could remember historical dates and scientific formulas like other kids remembered baseball statistics. But I was even better at football. And in Texas, if you're good at football, everything else becomes background noise. Picture this. By my senior year at Eastwood High School, I was the kind of player college scouts drive hours to watch. 6'2", 210 pounds, fast enough to outrun linebackers, strong enough to break tackles, smart enough to read defenses like a book. I had 3 scholarship offers, full rides, free education, free room and board, a chance to play the game I loved while getting a degree that would set me up for life. The University of Texas wanted me. Texas Tech wanted me. Even had a scout from Notre Dame asking questions about my grades and my character. Picture this for a moment. That's where I was in October of 2005. On top of the world, with more opportunities than I knew what to do with, and absolutely certain that my life was going to be perfect. Then, I met her. Her name was Sarah Michelle Williams, and she changed everything. Not just my plans, not just my future, but everything about who I thought I was and who I wanted to become. Let me tell you about Sarah Williams. Picture the most beautiful girl you've ever seen. Now picture her even more beautiful than that. Blonde hair that caught the light like spun gold. Blue eyes that looked like they held all the secrets of the universe. A smile that could make you forget your own name. But Sarah wasn't just beautiful. Beautiful girls were a dime a dozen at Eastwood High School. Sarah was something more dangerous than beautiful. Sarah was perfect. Or at least, she seemed perfect to a 17-year-old boy who thought he knew what love was. She was smart. Honor roll, debate team, student council president. The kind of smart that intimidated other students and impressed teachers. The kind of smart that could win arguments and change minds and make you believe things you never thought you'd believe. Her daddy owned 3 car dealerships in El Paso. Her mama was president of the junior league and volunteered at the country club on weekends. The Williams family had money, status, everything my family had worked their whole lives to achieve. I was from the wrong side of the tracks. She was from the right side of everything. I should have known better than to think someone like her would ever be interested in someone like me. But somehow, some miracle I still don't understand, she saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. We met at the homecoming dance, October 15th, 2005. I'll never forget that date. Not because it was the best night of my life, but because it was the beginning of the biggest mistake I ever made. Picture this scene. A high school gymnasium, decorated with crepe paper and balloons. A DJ playing music too loud for conversation. And 300 teenagers pretending they know how to dance. I was standing by the punch bowl, wearing a rented tuxedo that didn't quite fit, watching other couples dance, and wondering why I'd bothered coming to a dance where I didn't know how to dance. That's when she walked up to me. "You're Michael Rodriguez," she said. Not a question, just a statement. Like she'd been thinking about me, talking about me, planning this moment. "Yes, ma'am," I said, because that's how my mother raised me to talk to girls like Sarah Williams. "I've been watching you play football all season. You're really good." "Thank you, Miss Williams." She smiled, and that smile changed my entire life. "Do you know how to dance?" "No, ma'am. Not really." "Well, I do. Would you like me to teach you?" Picture this moment. Picture being 17 years old, awkward as hell, standing in a high school gymnasium decorated with crepe paper and balloons, and having the most beautiful girl in school ask if she can teach you to dance. What would you have said? What would any 17-year-old boy have said? I said yes. Of course I said yes. We danced to 3 songs. Slow songs, the kind where you barely move but somehow feel like you're flying. She taught me where to put my hands, how to move my feet, how to hold her close without stepping on her dress. But more than that, she talked to me. Really talked to me. She asked about my family, my classes, my plans for college. She listened when I told her about my dad's construction business, about my mom's cleaning jobs, about how hard my parents worked to give me opportunities they never had. She didn't look bored. "What do you want to do after college?" she asked, while we danced to some song I can't remember. "I don't know yet. Maybe business, maybe engineering. Something that would make my parents proud." "What would make you proud?" Nobody had ever asked me that question before. What would make me proud? Not my parents, not my teachers, not my coaches. Me. "I want to serve my country," I said, without really thinking about it. "I want to do something that matters, something bigger than myself." She looked at me like I'd said something profound instead of something naive. "That's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever said to me," she whispered. Later, she told me that was the moment she decided she was going to marry me. A 17-year-old girl listening to a 17-year-old boy talk about wanting to serve something bigger than himself, and deciding right there on a high school dance floor that she'd found her future husband. She wrote it in her diary that night. "Met the boy I'm going to marry," she wrote. "His name is Michael Rodriguez, and he has the most beautiful heart I've ever seen." I didn't find out about that diary entry until years later, when we were married, and she showed me the little pink book where she'd recorded all her teenage thoughts and dreams. Reading those words, seeing her handwriting from that night, knowing how young and hopeful and innocent we both were, it broke my heart. Because by the time she showed me that diary, I already knew how the story was going to end. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the good times first. Let me tell you about when I believed in forever, and she seemed to believe in it too. Sarah made me want to be better than I was, better than my circumstances. I started thinking about the future differently, not just getting out of El Paso, not just escaping the heat and the dust and the limitations of growing up poor, but building something. I studied harder. I trained harder. I started reading books about leadership and responsibility and what it means to be a man. I wanted to become someone who deserved her love, someone who could give her the life she was used to having. We spent the rest of our senior year together. Every football game, every school dance, every weekend study session. She came to my games and cheered louder than anyone else in the stands. I went to her debate tournaments and watched her demolish opponents with arguments I barely understood but admired completely. We were the perfect couple. The immigrant son who worked twice as hard as everyone else, and the all-American girl who believed in him completely. Everyone said we belonged together. Teachers, classmates, even our parents, who couldn't have been more different but somehow found common ground in wanting their children to be happy. Graduation day came in May 2006. I was valedictorian of my class. 4.0 GPA, full scholarship offers. The whole world spread out in front of me like a map of possibilities. Sarah was homecoming queen, prom queen, most likely to succeed. She had her own scholarship offers, her own bright future mapped out. College at UT, maybe law school after that, maybe politics someday. She was the kind of girl who could become anything she wanted to become. We should have gone to college. We should have pursued our separate dreams and maybe found each other again in a few years when we were older, wiser, more ready for the kind of love that lasts a lifetime. Instead, the day after graduation, I made two decisions that would change both our lives forever. The first decision seemed like the right thing to do, the romantic thing. The thing a man does when he finds the love of his life. I asked Sarah to marry me. Picture this scene. I didn't have a ring, didn't have a plan, didn't even have a speech prepared. I just looked at this beautiful girl who had somehow chosen to love me, and the words came tumbling out of my mouth before I could stop them. "Sarah Williams," I said. "Will you wait for me?" She stopped eating the blizzard and looked at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. "Wait for what, Michael?" That's when I told her about the second decision, the one that would change everything, the one I thought was noble and patriotic and the right thing to do, but was actually the beginning of the end of everything good in my life. I'm enlisting in the Army. The expression on her face went through about 10 different emotions in 5 seconds. Confusion, surprise, fear, anger, sadness, and finally something that looked like resignation. "You're what?" "I'm enlisting. I want to serve my country. I want to earn the right to give you the life you deserve." She stared at me for a long time. Cars were pulling in and out of the Dairy Queen parking lot. Families were going about their normal Sunday afternoon routines. The whole world was continuing like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. "Michael, you have scholarships. You have opportunities. You could go to college, become anything you want. Why would you throw that away?" "I'm not throwing it away. I'm postponing it. The Army will pay for my education when I get out. I'll have the GI Bill, veteran preferences, life experience. I'll be better prepared for college after I serve." "And what am I supposed to do while you're gone?" "Wait for me." Like I asked. Will you wait for me? Here's what I should have understood at that moment. When you ask someone to wait for you, that's a lot to ask of anyone. It's an impossible thing to ask of an 18-year-old girl who's never been away from her family, never lived on her own, never had to imagine her life without the person she loves most in the world. But Sarah said yes. She said yes because she loved me and because she believed in the same fairy tale I believed in. The fairy tale that says love conquers all, that promises mean something, that good people get happy endings if they're willing to work for them. "I'll wait for you," she said, and when she said it, I believed her completely. We got married 3 months later, on a perfect September day in 2006. St. Joseph's Catholic Church in El Paso, the same church where my parents had been married 25 years earlier. The same church where I'd made my first communion, where I'd been confirmed, where I'd learned to pray for things I wanted and trust that God would provide them. Let me paint you a picture of our wedding day. Picture a small church filled with 2 very different families trying to celebrate the same thing. My side of the church was construction workers and housekeepers, and people who'd worked with their hands their whole lives. Sarah's side was business owners and country club members, and people who'd never had to worry about money. But none of that mattered that day. What mattered was a 19-year-old boy in a military dress uniform standing at the altar, watching the most beautiful girl in the world walk down the aisle toward him. Sarah wore her grandmother's dress, ivory lace with tiny pearl buttons up the back and a train that seemed to go on forever. She looked like something out of a magazine, like a princess from a fairy tale, like everything perfect and pure and good in the world. I wore my army dress blues. I'd enlisted 2 months earlier, finished basic training, and earned the right to wear the uniform that represented everything I believed about honor. When Father Martinez asked if she would take me for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, Sarah looked me in the eyes and said yes. She meant it. God help us both, she meant every word. When Father Martinez asked if I would love her and honor her all the days of my life, I said yes with more conviction than I'd ever said anything in my 19 years on earth. We meant those promises, both of us. Standing there in that little church, surrounded by everyone we loved, making vows that were supposed to last forever. We believed every word we said. Our honeymoon was 3 days in San Antonio. We couldn't afford Hawaii or Europe or any of those exotic places newlyweds are supposed to go. but we didn't care. We stayed at this little bed and breakfast on the Riverwalk, the kind of place with creaky floors and thin walls, but a view of the water and enough charm to make you forget about everything else in the world. We talked about everything during those 3 days. The house we'd buy when I got out of the army, the kids we'd have, the life we'd build together. I wanted 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. I had their names picked out and everything. Miguel, after my grandfather who'd died when I was 12. James, after Sarah's father who'd welcomed me into his family despite our differences. Isabella, because Sarah said it was the most beautiful name she'd ever heard. And Grace. I insisted on Grace because that's what our love was to me. Pure grace. Undeserved favor from God. Sarah wanted a big house with a wraparound porch and a yard where our children could play safely. She wanted family dinners every Sunday, vacation trips to the beach, Christmas mornings with presents piled under a tree that touched the ceiling. We planned our entire lives during those 3 days. Every detail. I shipped out to advanced infantry training 6 days after our honeymoon ended. 6 days of marriage, then 15 months of separation. 15 months of believing that our love was strong enough to survive anything. But before I left for training, we made more promises. Promises that seemed reasonable at the time but turned out to be the beginning of our destruction. "I'll write you every day," I promised. "I'll write you back," she promised. "I'll call whenever I can. I'll always answer. Nothing will change between us. Nothing will change." Looking back now, I can see how naive those promises were. Everything changes when you're apart for 15 months. People grow, evolve, discover things about themselves they never knew. 18-year-old kids become 19-year-old adults. Priorities shift, dreams change. What seems important when you're together becomes less important when you're alone. But we didn't know any of that. We were young, we were in love, and we believed in forever. The night before I left for my first deployment to Iraq, we lay in bed in our tiny apartment, talking until sunrise. The same bed where we'd spent our wedding night 3 months earlier. The same room where we'd planned our future and promised each other that nothing would ever come between us. I kept saying, "Promise me you'll be here when I get back. Promise me nothing will change between us." She kept promising. Over and over again, she promised. I remember every detail of that last night. The way she smelled like strawberries and vanilla. The way her hair felt like silk against my fingers. The way she cried when she thought I was asleep, trying to be quiet so she wouldn't wake me, but unable to stop the tears from coming. I remember kissing her goodbye at the airport the next morning. She tasted like strawberry lip gloss and tears and everything I was leaving behind. She made me promise to come home to her, to be careful, to remember how much she loved me. Wild horses couldn't keep me away, I told her, and I meant it. That was January 12th, 2007. The last day I truly believed in happily ever after. The last day I believed that love was enough to overcome anything. The last day I believed in the fairy tale that had brought us together and convinced us we could make forever work. Now let me tell you what happened when I went to war for my country, while my wife went to war against our marriage. Let me tell you about the 15 months that destroyed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the woman I'd promised to spend my life with. Let me tell you about how the American dream became the American nightmare, and how the country I was willing to die for took everything I had to live for. Forward Operating Base Liberty, Iraq, January 2007. If you've never been to Iraq, let me paint you a picture of hell on earth. Picture heat so intense it melts the soles of your boots to the pavement. Picture sand that gets into everything: your food, your water, your weapons, your lungs. Picture a place where the temperature hits 130 degrees in the shade, except there is no shade. Picture sleeping in a concrete bunker with 12 other men, listening to mortars explode in the distance every night, wondering if tonight's the night one of them lands close enough to kill you. Picture waking up every morning not knowing if you'll live to see another sunset. Picture being 20 years old and responsible for keeping other 20-year-olds alive in a place where everything and everyone might be trying to kill you. That was my world for 15 months. I was part of the 1st Infantry Division, tasked with securing supply routes in one of the most dangerous regions of Iraq. Convoy duty, escorting trucks full of food, water, ammunition, and medical supplies to forward bases where other soldiers were fighting their own battles against insurgents who knew every inch of the terrain and had nothing to lose. Iraq wasn't what I expected. I thought it would be like the movies: clear enemies wearing uniforms, heroic missions with obvious objectives, coming home victorious to parades and celebrations. Instead, it was complicated, confusing, terrifying in ways that had nothing to do with combat and everything to do with uncertainty. You never knew who was friendly and who wanted you dead. A kid selling candy on the street corner could be spotting for insurgents, radioing your position to snipers hiding on rooftops. An old woman waving hello from her doorway could be signaling the location where they should plant the next roadside bomb. Every face was a potential threat. Every pile of trash was a potential IED. Every bridge, every overpass, every blind curve in the road was a potential kill zone where everything you cared about could end in a flash of fire and twisted metal. But I had something that got me through the fear, the heat, the uncertainty, and the constant threat of death. I had letters from Sarah. Every few days I'd get this envelope with her perfect handwriting on it, and for 20 or 30 minutes I could forget where I was. I could be back home, back in our little apartment, back with the woman I loved more than life itself. Let me tell you about those letters. Let me tell you about the lifeline that kept me sane, in a place designed to drive men crazy. My dearest Michael, she would write in that perfect cursive handwriting they don't teach in schools anymore. I miss you so much it physically hurts. I sleep on your side of the bed, wear your old t-shirts to feel close to you, spray your cologne on my pillow so I can pretend you're still here with me. She would tell me about her job at First National Bank, where she'd been promoted from teller to customer service representative. She was proud of that promotion, and I was proud of her. My wife, making her own way in the world. She told me about her family. Her father's business was doing well. Her mother had joined another volunteer committee at the country club. Her brother had made varsity football as a sophomore. She told me what she watched on television, what books she was reading, what she had for dinner the night before. Normal, everyday details that meant everything to a man sitting in a concrete bunker in Iraq, missing home so much it felt like dying. But most importantly, she told me about us, about how much she missed me, how proud she was of me, how she counted the days until I could come home and we could start our real life together. She started a blog called Army Wife Life, where she wrote about the challenges of being married to a deployed soldier. She said other military wives commented on her posts, sharing their own stories, supporting each other through the loneliness and uncertainty of having husbands in combat zones. It helps me feel less alone, she wrote, knowing that other women are going through the same thing I'm going through. knowing that I'm not the only one who talks to your picture every night and cries myself to sleep sometimes. Reading those letters, I felt like the luckiest man in the world. Here I was, fighting in a war on the other side of the planet, and back home I had a woman who loved me enough to wait, to be faithful, to build a community of support around our marriage. At least, that's what I thought the blog was for. While Sarah was building her online community back home, I was fighting for my life in the Iraqi desert. My unit was assigned to convoy duty, which sounds boring, but was actually one of the most dangerous jobs in the entire war. Picture this. Every few days we'd load up in armored Humvees and escort supply trucks through insurgent territory. Miles and miles of desert highway, where every piece of trash, every dead animal, every pile of rocks could be hiding an IED powerful enough to flip a 20-ton truck like a toy. We drive in formation, lead vehicle, supply trucks, rear guard, scanning the horizon for snipers, watching the road for fresh tire tracks that might indicate buried bombs, listening to radio chatter for intelligence about enemy movement in our area. The convoys took hours. Hours of driving through hostile territory where you couldn't relax for even a second, because the second you relaxed was the second you died. I remember this one day in March 23rd, 2007. A day that changed everything for me, though I didn't understand it at the time. We were escorting a supply convoy to forward operating base Courage, about 60 miles north of our position. Standard run, nothing out of the ordinary. The weather was clear, the road was familiar. We'd made the same trip dozens of times without incident. Corporal Johnson was riding in my vehicle. Tommy Johnson from Toledo, Ohio, 22 years old, engaged to a girl named Lisa who sent him care packages full of homemade cookies and pictures of herself in wedding dresses she was considering for their ceremony when he got home. Johnson was my best friend in Iraq. The kind of friend you make when you're sharing foxholes and MREs and the constant possibility of death. The kind of friend you trust with your life, because you have to trust someone, and he's proven himself worthy of that trust over and over again. "Rodriguez," he said over the radio. "You see that guy on the overpass?" 2:00. I looked where he was pointing and saw a man standing on the bridge we were approaching. Just standing there, watching our convoy approach. Could have been innocent. Local resident curious about the Americans passing through his neighborhood. Could have been a spotter, radioing our position to insurgents with RPGs or IEDs. In Iraq, you had maybe 2 seconds to decide whether someone was a threat or not. 2 seconds to choose between protecting yourself and your squad. "Yeah, I see him," I said. "Probably nothing, but driver, take the next exit." The IED explosion that changed everything happened 30 seconds later. The blast was so loud it felt like the world was ending. So powerful it lifted our Humvee 30 feet in the air and threw it against a concrete barrier like a child throwing a toy. The ringing in my ears was so intense I thought my eardrums had burst. For a moment, there was complete silence. Not the kind of silence where nothing is happening, but the kind of silence that comes after something so violent and overwhelming that your brain needs time to process what just occurred. Then the screaming started. Johnson was trapped under our overturned vehicle. I could see his legs protruding from underneath the twisted metal, and I could see that they were crushed beyond recognition. But he was conscious, talking to me, trying to stay calm even though we both knew he was dying. "Mike," he said, his voice weak but clear. "Mike, you gotta promise me something." "Don't talk like that, man. Medic's coming, you're gonna be fine. Lisa's waiting for you back home, remember? You're gonna marry that girl and have those babies you're always talking about. Promise me, he insisted. Promise me you'll go home to that beautiful wife of yours, and you'll never let her go. You hear me? Never let her go. I was trying to lift the Humvee off him, even though I knew it was hopeless. 2 tons of armored vehicle, and me trying to move it with my bare hands, because I couldn't accept that my best friend was dying, and there was nothing I could do about it. I promise, I said. I promise I'll never let Sarah go. But you're gonna be fine, Tommy. You're gonna be fine. He wasn't fine. He died holding my hand while I waited for the medic who arrived too late to save him. I carried his body to the evacuation helicopter. I helped load him into a body bag. I wrote the letter to his parents explaining how their son had died serving his country with honor. But most importantly, I remembered the promise I'd made to him. The promise to never let Sarah go. If only I'd known that Sarah had already let me go. That night, I wrote Sarah the longest letter I'd ever written. Told her about Johnson, about watching my best friend die, about how fragile life is, and how precious every moment becomes when you realize it could be your last. My darling Sarah, I wrote, sitting in my concrete bunker with Johnson's blood still under my fingernails. Something happened today that reminded me how precious every moment is. I can't tell you the details because of operational security, but I lost a friend. A good friend, a brother. It makes me realize that life is so short and love is so rare, and the time we have together is so limited that we can't waste a single second of it taking each other for granted. I need you to know that everything I do over here, every risk I take, every day I survive, it's all for you, for us. For the life we're going to build together when I come home. You are my reason for living. You are what gets me through the fear and the heat and the loneliness. I think about you every morning when I wake up and every night before I fall asleep. I think about our apartment, our plans, our dreams. I think about the children we're going to have and the life we're going to build, and the love that's going to carry us through whatever challenges come our way. Promise me you'll be strong while I figure out how to keep going without my best friend. Promise me you'll remember how much I love you, even when the days are long and the nights are longer. Promise me you'll wait for me, no matter how hard it gets. I sealed that letter with tears and blood and everything I had left to give. I walked to the mail drop in the middle of the night, under a sky full of stars that looked nothing like the stars over Texas, and I sent my heart across an ocean to the woman I loved more than life itself. Sarah wrote me back immediately. She told me about the surprise she was planning for my return. She'd been saving money from her promotions at the bank, decorating our apartment, making everything perfect for when I came home. "I'm painting the bedroom your favorite color, blue," she wrote. "I bought new sheets, the Egyptian cotton ones you said we couldn't afford. I'm making our home into the sanctuary you deserve after everything you've been through. I love you more than words can express, Michael. I'm so proud of you, so proud to be your wife. So grateful that God brought us together. You're going to come home to me, and we're going to have the most beautiful life together." Reading her letter, I felt like maybe I could survive Iraq after all. Maybe Johnson's death meant something if it reminded me how precious love is, how rare it is to find someone willing to wait for you while you fight a war on the other side of the world. We got to call home once a week if we were lucky. Hearing her voice was better than water in the desert, Better than mail from home. Better than anything else that could happen in that God-forsaken place. Michael? Michael, is that really you? It's me, baby. God, it's so good to hear your voice. I miss you so much it hurts. When are you coming home? Soon, baby. Real soon. I'm counting the days. I'm counting them too. I have a calendar on the refrigerator with every day marked off. 237 days until you're home. 237 days until I can hold you again. 237 days until our real life begins. But soon turned into longer. My deployment was extended once, then twice. What was supposed to be 12 months became 15 months, then 18 months. The second extension nearly broke me. I'd been holding on, thinking about home, about Sarah, about our future. But now I didn't know when I'd see her again. The finish line kept moving further away. The worst part was that the letters started coming less frequently. What had been daily letters became every few days, then weekly, then sporadic. Phone calls became shorter, more awkward, filled with long silences that neither of us seemed to know how to fill. Sarah seemed distant, distracted, like she was there but not really there, if that makes sense. Her letters became more formal, less personal. Dear Michael, sorry I haven't written much lately. Work has been crazy busy. I got promoted again, assistant branch manager now. The hours are long, but the money is good. Hope you're staying safe. Love, Sarah. Something was different in her tone. Less warmth, more business-like. Like she was writing to a friend instead of her husband. Like she was going through the motions of being a military wife without actually feeling it anymore. But I told myself it was just stress, just the distance, just the war wearing on both of us in different ways. I told myself that 18 months was a long time to be apart, that it was natural for communication to become more difficult, that once I got home everything would go back to normal. I told myself a lot of lies during those last few months in Iraq. By month 15, my unit was involved in some of the heaviest fighting of the war. Fallujah was a hell on earth, and I was right in the middle of it. We were clearing houses, looking for insurgent weapons caches, going door to door in a city where every building could be booby-trapped, every window could hide a sniper, every room could be your last. I kicked in the door of this house on a Tuesday morning in November, and there was a kid, couldn't have been more than 16, pointing an AK-47 at my chest. I had maybe 2 seconds to decide. Shoot a kid, or maybe die myself. Maybe let my squad mates die because I hesitated when hesitation meant death. The shrapnel from a roadside bomb caught me in the shoulder and leg a few weeks later. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to earn me a Purple Heart and a month in a military hospital in Germany. That's when I finally had time to really think. Time to process everything that had happened. Time to miss Sarah so much it felt like dying. I wrote her a letter from my hospital bed. Told her I'd been wounded but was okay. Told her I'd be coming home soon. Told her I couldn't wait to start our real life together. Her response was different from anything she'd written before. Dearest Michael, I'm so sorry to hear you were hurt. I'm glad you're okay and that you're finally coming home. I can't wait to see you too. We have a lot to talk about when you get back. Love, Sarah. We have a lot to talk about. That phrase haunted me for the remaining weeks of my deployment. What did that mean? Why did she sound so formal, so distant, so unlike the woman who used to write me love letters that made me cry with happiness? But I pushed those thoughts away. I was going home. After 18 months of hell, I was finally going home to my wife. Nothing else mattered. At least, that's what I told myself. I had no idea that while I was fighting a war in Iraq, Sarah had been waging her own war back home. A war against our marriage. A war against me. A war she was already winning. March 15, 2019, Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. After 18 months in Iraq, I was finally coming home. I'll never forget walking through that gate. I was scanning the crowd, looking for that beautiful blonde hair, those blue eyes, that smile that had carried me through the darkest days of my life. All around me, soldiers were being welcomed home by their families. Wives throwing themselves into their husbands' arms, kids screaming "Daddy," parents crying with relief and joy. I stood in that crowded airport for 20 minutes, thinking maybe she was stuck in traffic. Maybe she was running late. Maybe there was some explanation for why the most important person in my life wasn't there to welcome me home from war. I called her cell phone 6 times. Every call went straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Sarah. I can't come to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can." Her voice sounded different even on the voicemail. More mature, maybe. Or maybe just more distant. Like she was already pulling away from me before I'd even made it home. Finally, I grabbed my duffel bag and took a cab home. $43 I didn't really have, but I just wanted to get to my wife. I figured there had to be some explanation. Maybe she was planning a surprise. Maybe she was cooking my favorite meal. Maybe she was waiting for me in something special. The closer we got to home, the more excited I became. 18 months of dreaming about this moment. 18 months of imagining walking through our front door, dropping my bags and taking my wife in my arms. The taxi driver looked at me in the rear-view mirror and asked, "You sure this is the right address, soldier?" I looked up at our apartment building. It looked different somehow. Smaller than I remembered. Shabbier. Like the whole neighborhood had aged while I was gone. I climbed those stairs 2 at a time. My heart was pounding, not from the exertion, but from anticipation. 18 months of dreaming about this moment. I put my key in the lock and turned it. The door opened into darkness. The apartment was empty. Not just quiet, but actually empty. The furniture was gone. The pictures were gone. The life I had left behind had simply vanished.
The little dining set Sarah's parents had given us as a wedding gift was gone. The coffee table where we used to eat dinner while watching movies was gone. Even the cheap curtains we'd hung together on our first day in this apartment were gone. I walked into our bedroom. The bed was still there, but it was just a mattress on the floor. No sheets, no pillows, no comforter. No trace of Sarah. No trace of us. I opened the closet. Empty hangers swaying like skeletons in a graveyard. That's when I found the note. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, propped up against the empty space where our microwave used to be. A single sheet of paper that would destroy everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the woman I'd married. "Michael, I'm sorry I couldn't be there to welcome you home. This isn't how I wanted to do this, but I couldn't face you in person. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've moved out. I've moved on. I think it's best for both of us if we don't see each other. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce papers. I'm sorry. Sarah." I read that note maybe 50 times. Each word felt like a bullet to the chest. Each sentence was another piece of my heart being torn away. I've moved on. What did that mean? Moved on to what? To who? My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce papers. Divorce papers? She'd already filed for divorce? While I was in a hospital in Germany, recovering from wounds I'd received fighting for my country, my wife was filing paperwork to end our marriage? I called her cell phone again. This time, someone answered. A man's voice, deep, confident, casual. The voice of someone who wasn't surprised to be answering my wife's phone. Hello. I'm looking for Sarah. Sarah Rodriguez. Who is this? This is her husband. There was a long pause, then an awkward laugh that made my blood run cold. Dude, she's not your wife anymore. The phone went dead. In that moment, sitting in my empty apartment, holding a phone that had just delivered the worst news of my life, I understood something I'd been too naive to see before. The war I'd been fighting in Iraq was nothing compared to the war that had been waged on my heart while I was gone. I couldn't breathe. The walls of that empty apartment started closing in on me. I felt like I was back in Iraq, under fire, but this was worse. So much worse. In Iraq, at least I could see my enemies. I could fight back. I could protect myself and my squad mates. But this enemy had been hidden, invisible, working in the shadows to destroy everything I cared about while I was thousands of miles away, unable to defend what mattered most. The apartment phone rang. For a moment, my heart leaped. Maybe it was Sarah. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe this was all some terrible mistake that could be explained and forgiven. Rodriguez? That you? You're 3 months behind on rent. You got 48 hours to pay up, or I'm changing the locks. 3 months behind on rent? But Sarah had access to my military pay through direct deposit. She was supposed to be taking care of the bills, managing our finances, keeping our life together while I fought a war. I started going through what little mail was left behind. Credit card bills, maxed out. Bank statements showing our joint account was overdrawn by hundreds of dollars. Notice after notice of late payments, missed payments, defaults. She'd spent everything. Every penny I'd earned fighting for my country, she'd spent on God knows what, and then she'd disappeared. But I still didn't understand the whole truth. I thought maybe she'd made some bad financial decisions. Maybe she'd panicked when I got wounded and started spending money she didn't have. Maybe she'd gotten in over her head and was too embarrassed to tell me. I was still making excuses for her, still trying to find ways to make her betrayal seem less complete than it actually was. I looked out the window and saw Mrs. Henderson from next door getting out of her car. She was an elderly woman who'd lived in our building for 20 years, knew everyone's business, always had a kind word and a plate of cookies for the young married couple upstairs. Maybe she'd seen Sarah. Maybe she knew where she went. I walked downstairs and knocked on her door. Oh my Lord, Michael! You're home. How are you, dear? Are you all right? You look so thin. I'm fine, Mrs. Henderson. I'm looking for Sarah. Do you know where she went? The expression on her face changed immediately, from joy to concern to something that looked like pity. Oh, honey, you don't know, do you? Know what? Maybe you should come inside. We need to talk. She made me sit at her kitchen table while she poured 2 cups of coffee and gathered the courage to destroy what was left of my world. She's been gone for months, dear. She moved out right after Christmas. But Michael, she wasn't alone. What do you mean? There was a man. He'd been coming around since last summer. At first I thought maybe he was just helping her with things around the apartment, you know. A friend helping out a military wife whose husband was deployed. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But then I realized he was spending the night. Every night. His truck would be in the parking lot when I went to bed and still be there when I woke up in the morning. I felt something cold and heavy settling in my stomach, something that felt like death. What did this man look like? Tall, good-looking fellow. Drove a nice truck, one of those big Ford F-150s. Real charmer, always brought her flowers. Took her out to fancy restaurants. The kind of man who has money to spend on a woman. How long? How long what, dear? How long was this going on? She looked at me with such pity in her eyes that I almost couldn't stand it. Since about 3 months after you deployed, Michael. I'm so sorry. I thought about writing to you, but I didn't want to upset you while you were in a war zone. I thought maybe it would work itself out. Maybe she'd come to her senses. 3 months. Sarah had lasted exactly 3 months as a faithful military wife. For the remaining 15 months of my deployment, while I was dodging bullets and watching friends die, while I was writing love letters and dreaming of coming home to her arms, she was building a life with another man. While I was promising Tommy Johnson on his deathbed that I'd never let Sarah go, Sarah had already let me go and moved on to someone who could give her things I couldn't. Someone who was there, present, available. Someone who wasn't fighting a war on the other side of the world. I walked the streets of our neighborhood for hours that night, past the places we used to go together, the little Mexican restaurant where we had our first date, the park where I proposed to her under a sky full of Texas stars, the church where we got married and promised to love each other forever. Everything looked the same, but everything was different. Because I was different. The man who'd left for Iraq 18 months ago, that man was dead. Sarah had killed him as surely as any insurgent's bullet. I ended up at Murphy's Tavern, this little dive bar, where we used to go sometimes, when we wanted to feel like grown-ups. I sat at the bar and ordered a beer, and that's when I saw Tommy, the bartender who'd served us on our first official date as a married couple. Rodriguez! Holy shit, man. You're back. How was Iraq? How's that beautiful wife of yours? Before I could answer, he kept talking. Sarah? Right? She used to come in here all the time with that boyfriend of hers. Real nice guy, always tipped well. They seemed really happy together. Tommy realized his mistake the moment the words left his mouth. Oh fuck, man. I'm sorry. I thought you knew. I thought maybe you guys had gotten divorced or something. Tell me about him. Michael, maybe we shouldn't. Tell me about him. The bar got quieter. Other conversations stopped. Everyone was looking at us now. His name's Brad. Brad Morrison. Works in real estate. Makes good money from what I could tell. Drives that big Ford truck. Always dressed nice. I threw my beer bottle against the wall behind the bar. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, just like my heart. Did she ever mention me? Her husband? The soldier fighting in Iraq? Tommy looked like he wanted to crawl under the bar and hide. Man, she told everyone you guys were getting divorced. Said you'd grown apart during the deployment. Wanted different things. Said the marriage was over, and you both knew it. The marriage was over. While I was fighting for my country, Sarah was telling bartenders and strangers that our marriage was over. While I was writing love letters about how much I missed her, she was explaining to her new boyfriend's friends why she was free to date him. While I was bleeding in a hospital in Germany, she was probably planning her new life with Brad Morrison. I left the bar and walked home through streets that no longer felt like home. Back to an apartment that was no longer mine. Back to a life that no longer existed. But I still didn't know the worst part. I still didn't know just how deep the betrayal went, how long she'd been planning this, how much of our marriage had been a lie. The next morning my phone rang. I thought maybe it was Sarah. Maybe she'd come to her senses. Maybe she wanted to explain, to apologize, to try to work things out. Is this Michael Rodriguez? Yes. This is Patricia Manning, attorney for Sarah Rodriguez. I'm calling to discuss the divorce proceedings. Divorce proceedings? Mrs. Rodriguez filed for divorce 4 months ago on grounds of irreconcilable differences. The papers were sent to your military address overseas. Didn't you receive them? 4 months ago, while I was in combat operations in Fallujah, dodging bullets and trying to stay alive, my wife was filing papers to dissolve our marriage. I've been in combat. Mail delivery isn't always reliable. Well, the proceedings have continued in your absence. Mrs. Rodriguez is seeking half of all marital assets, including your military benefits and any combat pay received during deployment. What assets? She cleaned out our bank account and left me with nothing but debt. There was a pause while the lawyer shuffled papers. I'll need to review the financial statements with my client and get back to you. In the meantime, please have your attorney contact our office. Attorney. I didn't have an attorney. I barely had enough money for food. My wife had spent everything I'd earned risking my life for my country, and now her lawyer wanted half of what didn't exist. After I hung up, I sat in that empty apartment trying to make sense of what had happened to my life. 24 hours ago, I'd been a soldier coming home from war to the woman he loved. Now, I was a divorced man with no money, no home, and no future. I went to the library and started researching. I needed to understand how this had happened, when it had started, how I'd been so blind to what was going on back home. I found Sarah's blog, Army Wife Life, the one she'd told me about in her letters. The one where she supposedly wrote about the challenges of being married to a deployed soldier. I thought maybe reading her posts would help me understand what had gone wrong when she'd started pulling away, why she'd decided our marriage wasn't worth fighting for. The first few posts were exactly what I expected. Missing my hero husband. Counting the days until he comes home. So proud of my soldier. But then, about 6 months into my deployment, the tone started changing. Update from Army Wife Life. The loneliness is getting harder to bear. I know military spouses are supposed to be strong, but sometimes I wonder if this is the life I really want. Sometimes I wonder if I'm wasting the best years of my life waiting for someone who might not even come back. That post got dozens of comments from other military wives. Most of them were supportive, telling her to stay strong, that it would all be worth it when I came home, that the sacrifice meant something. But Sarah's next post was worse. I've been thinking a lot about happiness lately. Are we obligated to stay in situations that make us miserable just because we made promises when we were young and naive? People change. Dreams change. Maybe the brave thing isn't staying. Maybe the brave thing is admitting when something isn't working and moving on. The comments on that post were split. Some wives were horrified, telling her she was betraying not just me, but all military families. But others were encouraging her to follow her heart and choose happiness. What I found next revealed the true depth of Sarah's deception and planning. Update from Army Wife Life. I've met someone. I wasn't looking for this, and I know the timing is complicated, but sometimes life surprises you. He makes me laugh again. He makes me feel beautiful and wanted and alive. I forgot what that felt like. She'd posted that 7 months into my deployment. 7 months after I'd left for Iraq, while I was writing her love letters and counting the days until I could come home to her. She was falling in love with someone else and blogging about it for the world to see. The comments were brutal. Military wives from around the country were tearing into her, calling her a traitor, a disgrace to the uniform, a woman who had no honor or integrity. But Sarah didn't care. She kept posting. To everyone sending me hate mail, I didn't plan this. Love isn't something you can control. My husband and I grew apart during his deployment. We want different things now. This isn't about betraying anyone. It's about being honest, about what isn't working. We grew apart. We wanted different things. I was reading love letters from her every week, while she was writing blog posts about how our marriage was falling apart. How was that growing apart? I scrolled through months of posts, watching my marriage dissolve in real time through my wife's public diary, watching her justify her betrayal to strangers on the internet while lying to me in letters and phone calls. He understands me in ways my husband never did. He's here, present, available. He doesn't disappear for months at a time to fight other people's wars. He puts me first, always. I know some of you think I'm being selfish, but I refuse to spend my life waiting for someone who chose the military over me. I deserve to be happy. I deserve to be loved by someone who's actually here. I've tried to make this marriage work, but you can't build a life with someone who's never around. I'm 20 years old. I'm not going to waste my youth waiting for a man who might not even come home. Sarah's final blog post was published just 2 weeks before I returned from Iraq. Final update from Army wife life. I'm moving on with my life. I've moved in with the man I love. We're planning a future together. To all the military wives who supported me through the difficult times, thank you. To those who judged me, I understand your anger. But I hope someday you'll understand that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone go. Let someone go. She was letting me go. Like I was a stray dog she'd grown tired of feeding. I printed out every single blog post, every comment, every lie she'd told about our marriage being over, about us growing apart, about wanting different things. I walked out of that library with a stack of evidence proving that while I was fighting for my country, my wife was publicly humiliating me and planning her escape. But I still needed to see her. I needed to look her in the eye and ask her why. Why she couldn't wait. Why she couldn't be honest. Why she destroyed everything we'd built together. I found out where she worked through her blog posts. The bank had promoted her twice while I was gone. She was assistant branch manager now, making good money, building a career while I was getting shot at for soldier's pay. I walked into First National Bank at 2 in the afternoon, still wearing my desert camouflage uniform and combat boots. The whole place went quiet when I walked in. Customers, tellers, security guards, everyone stared at me like I was some kind of ghost. And then I saw her. She was standing behind the customer service desk, helping an elderly couple with their account. She looked exactly the same. Same blonde hair, same blue eyes, same beautiful smile that had made me fall in love with her in a high school gymnasium 6 years earlier. For a moment, my heart stopped. For a moment, I forgot everything that had happened and just remembered how much I'd loved her, how much I'd believed in us, how much I'd been willing to sacrifice for the future we'd planned together. She looked up and saw me. The color drained from her face. Her hand started shaking. She whispered something to her coworkers and walked toward me like she was approaching a wild animal. "Michael, you're home." "I'm home." We stood there looking at each other for what felt like hours. I could see tears forming in her eyes. I could see the guilt, the shame, the regret. But I could also see something else. Relief. Like she was glad this moment had finally come. Glad she didn't have to pretend anymore. "We need to talk," I said. "Not here. Please, not here." "Then where?" "There's a coffee shop down the street. Stella's. Meet me there in an hour. I'll explain everything." I waited for her at Stella's Coffee for 3 hours. She never came. Instead, I got a text message at 5:30 that evening. "Michael, I can't do this. I can't see you face to face. It's too hard, and it won't change anything. Please understand that what happened between us, it wasn't about you. You're a good man, a hero, and you deserve better than what I gave you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." That was it. That was my closure. A text message from the woman I'd married, the woman I'd fought for, the woman I'd almost died for. A text message explaining that she was too much of a coward to face what she'd done. But I wasn't done. I couldn't be done. I needed her to face what she'd done. I needed her to acknowledge the pain she'd caused, the promises she'd broken, the life she'd destroyed. I drove to the address Mrs. Henderson had given me, Sarah's new address, a nice house in a nice neighborhood with well-maintained lawns and 2 car garages. The kind of neighborhood Sarah had always wanted to live in, the kind of life I'd never been able to give her. Brad Morrison's house. I sat in my car across the street for 2 hours, just watching. At 7:30, a black Ford F-150 pulled into the driveway. A tall, handsome man got out, clean-cut, well-dressed, everything I wasn't after 18 months of war. Then Sarah came out of the house to greet him. She ran to him like she'd never run to me, threw her arms around his neck like she'd never thrown her arms around mine, kissed him like she'd never kissed me, with a passion and joy I'd never seen in her face during our entire marriage. She was wearing a sundress I'd never seen before, yellow with little white flowers. Her hair was longer, styled differently. She looked happy, radiant, more beautiful than I'd ever seen her. This was the woman I'd married. This was the woman I'd fought for. This was the woman who'd promised to wait for me, to love me forever, to be there when I came home from war. And she was there, just not for me. They went inside together, and I watched them through the kitchen window, cooking dinner together, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear, dancing to music that wasn't playing for me, playing house, playing the life we'd planned to have together. I watched them for 2 hours before I finally drove away. I never went back to that house. I never tried to contact Sarah again. That night, I called my father for the first time since I'd been home. "Mijo, where have you been? We've been worried sick. Your mother's been calling the army trying to find out if you made it home safely." I told him everything, about coming home to an empty apartment, about Sarah's betrayal, about the blog posts, and the other man and the divorce papers I'd never received, about watching her dance in another man's kitchen while I sat in a car across the street like some kind of stalker. My father was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Son, some people aren't built for sacrifice. Some people aren't built to wait. Some people aren't built to love someone more than they love themselves. Sarah was one of those people. But she promised, Papa. She promised she'd wait for me. I know, mijo, I know she did. But promises are only as strong as the person making them. And some people's promises aren't worth the breath they're spoken with. What do I do now? How do I move forward from this? You remember who you are. You're Michael Rodriguez. You're my son. You served your country with honor. You saved lives. You were willing to die for something bigger than yourself. That woman, she took your heart, but she didn't take your character. She didn't take your strength. She didn't take your worth. I cried for the first time since I'd been home, not the angry tears I'd been holding back, but deep, healing tears, the kind of tears that wash away the poison and leave room for something new to grow. My father was right. Sarah had taken my heart, but she hadn't taken everything. I was still the same man who'd enlisted to serve his country, still the same man who'd carried wounded friends to safety under enemy fire, still the same man who'd written love letters in a foxhole and dreamed of coming home to build a life with the woman he loved. The only difference was now, I knew what kind of woman she really was. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Sarah got half of everything, including half of my combat pay. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I was dodging bullets and watching friends die, she was spending the money I was earning. Then she took half of what was left. I signed the papers without fighting. I just wanted it to be over. I moved back in with my parents for a while, started seeing a therapist for PTSD, started trying to figure out who I was, now that the life I'd planned was gone. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the realization that while I'd been overseas, fighting for the freedom and security of people I'd never met, the one person I'd trusted to guard my heart had simply thrown it away. I'd survived Iraq. I'd survived combat. I'd survived watching good men die. But I almost didn't survive coming home to discover that the woman I'd loved more than life itself had decided I wasn't. 2 years after I came home from Iraq, I met Maria. She was a nurse at the VA hospital where I volunteered. Beautiful, kind, patient. She knew my story, knew about Sarah, knew about the scars I carried both inside and out. Maria didn't try to fix me or complete me or fill the hole Sarah had left behind. She just loved me exactly as I was, broken pieces and all. We've been married now for 3 years. We have a son, David Michael, named after my grandfather and me. He's 2 years old and has his mother's eyes and his father's stubborn streak. I never had the 4 children I dreamed about with Sarah. Miguel, James, Isabella, and Grace. Those names belonged to a different life, a different dream, a different man who believed in fairy tales and happy endings. But I have David, and he's perfect. And Maria wants more children, and maybe we'll have them. Maybe we'll build the family I always wanted, just with different people than I'd planned. Sarah lives about 20 miles away now. She married Brad Morrison 6 months after our divorce was finalized. They have twin girls and a big house with a wraparound porch, just like she always wanted. I know this because small towns are small towns, and everyone knows everyone's business. I don't hate her anymore. Hate takes too much energy, and I need all my energy for the life I'm building now. But I do think about her sometimes. I wonder if she ever thinks about the promises she made. I wonder if she ever thinks about the man she left behind. I wonder if she remembers September 11th, 2001. We were seniors in high school when those towers fell. I remember holding her hand as we watched the news coverage. Both of us crying. Both of us scared about what it meant for our country. That was the day I decided I wanted to serve. Watching those buildings collapse, seeing those firefighters run into the smoke when everyone else was running out, I knew I wanted to be the kind of man who runs toward danger to protect others. Sarah said she was proud of me that day. She said she'd wait for me no matter how long it took. She said she understood that some things are bigger than our own comfort, our own desires, our own immediate happiness. 23 years later, as we remember that terrible day and honor the heroes who sacrificed everything, I think about sacrifice. Real sacrifice. The kind that costs you something precious and asks for nothing in return. The firefighters who climbed those stairs knew they might not come home. They went anyway. The passengers on Flight 93 knew they were probably going to die. They fought anyway. The soldiers who enlisted after 9/11 knew they were signing up for war. We went anyway. That's what sacrifice means, giving everything for something bigger than yourself. Sarah never understood that. She thought love was supposed to be easy, comfortable, convenient. She thought commitment was something you honored only when it felt good. She was wrong. But here's what I've learned. Betrayal doesn't have to destroy you. It can reveal who you really are. It can strip away everything false and leave only what's true and strong and worth keeping. I am Michael Rodriguez. I served my country with honor. I survived war, betrayal, and heartbreak. I found love again with a woman who understands the weight of promises. I'm raising a son who will know what it means to keep your word. My story didn't end the way I planned, but it's still my story, and I'm still writing it. Some nights, I still dream about Iraq. about Tommy Johnson and the promise I made to him, about never letting Sarah go. But I understand now that the promise wasn't about holding on to someone who didn't want to be held. The promise was about never letting go of the capacity to love, to trust, to believe in something bigger than myself. I kept that promise. Not the way I thought I would, but in the way that mattered most. Let me tell you something about healing that nobody talks about. It doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't happen because you decide you want to heal. It happens slowly, in moments you don't expect, through people who show you what love actually looks like. For me, healing started with my father's calloused hands teaching me how to frame a house, how to measure twice, cut once, build something that would last longer than the man who built it. "Mijo," he'd say while we worked, "a house is only as strong as its foundation. If you build on sand, the first storm will knock it down. If you build on rock, it'll stand for generations." I thought he was talking about construction. Later, I realized he was talking about marriage. My marriage to Sarah was built on sand, on feelings that changed with the weather, promises that crumbled under pressure, love that only existed when it was convenient. My marriage to Maria is built on rock, on commitment that doesn't waver, promises that get stronger under pressure, love that deepens when life gets difficult. The difference isn't that Maria is perfect and Sarah wasn't. The difference is that Maria understands what real love costs, and she's willing to pay that price every day. When I wake up screaming from nightmares about Johnson's death, Maria doesn't roll over and pretend she doesn't hear me. She holds me until the shaking stops and reminds me that I'm home, I'm safe, I'm loved. When I get triggered by crowds or loud noises or the smell of diesel fuel, Maria doesn't get embarrassed or frustrated. She quietly guides me somewhere safe and waits with me until the panic passes. When I have days where the depression is so heavy I can barely get out of bed, Maria doesn't lecture me about pulling myself together. She brings me coffee, sits with me in the silence, and loves me through the darkness. That's what real love looks like, not the fairy tale version where everything is perfect and nothing bad ever happens. The real version where two imperfect people choose each other through the messiness and the beauty and the ordinary miracle of building a life together. Sarah couldn't love me like that. She loved the idea of me, the image of being married to a soldier, the fantasy of being a military wife. But when the reality of loving a combat veteran became difficult, when it required sacrifice instead of providing glory, she decided it wasn't what she wanted after all. I don't blame her for that anymore. I used to be angry, bitter, consumed with trying to understand how she could throw away something so precious. Now I see it differently. Some people are built for the easy seasons of love. They can love you when you're strong, successful, when loving you makes them look good and feel good about themselves. Other people are built for all the seasons of love. They can love you when you're weak, broken, when loving you costs them something and gives them nothing back except the satisfaction of keeping their promises. Sarah was built for easy seasons. Maria was built for all seasons. Neither one is evil, but only one of them was right for me. I needed someone who could love me through war zones and homecomings, through nightmares and healing, through the worst day of my life and the best day of my life, and all the ordinary days in between. Sarah couldn't do that. Maria can. That's why our love will last. Not because we're perfect, but because we're committed to loving each other imperfectly for the rest of our lives. That's why I can tell you with complete confidence that if I had to deploy again tomorrow, if I had to leave Maria and David for 18 months to serve my country, she'd be there when I came home. Not because she's a saint, but because she's a woman who understands what promises mean and keeps them regardless of how she feels on any given day. That kind of love exists. I'm living proof that it exists. But you have to be worthy of it yourself. You have to be the kind of person who can recognize real commitment when you see it and return it with the same depth and consistency. You have to be willing to love someone through their worst seasons, not just their best ones. You have to be ready to keep your promises when keeping them is hard, not just when it's convenient. Most importantly, you have to understand that love isn't something that happens to you. Love is something you do, something you choose, something you build one day at a time through 1,000 small decisions to put someone else's well-being ahead of your own comfort. Sarah never learned that. Maybe she never will. But I did learn it, and it changed everything about how I approach relationships, parenting, friendship, even how I serve other veterans at the hospital. Love is a verb, not a feeling. It's an action, not an emotion. It's a choice you make with your behavior, not just your words. When David gets older and asks me about love, about marriage, about how to know if someone is worth building a life with, I'll tell him to watch their actions when loving them becomes difficult. Do they show up when you need them, even when showing up is inconvenient? Do they keep their promises when keeping them costs them something? Do they choose you when choosing you requires sacrifice? If the answer is yes, consistently and over time, then you've found someone worth loving forever. If the answer is no, if their love only exists when it's easy and comfortable and beneficial to them, then you've found someone who will break your heart the moment life gets challenging. Sarah answered no to all those questions. I just didn't see it at the time because I was young and naive and wanted so badly to believe in the fairy tale. Maria answers yes to all those questions every single day. Not perfectly, because she's human, but consistently, because she's committed. That's the difference between someone who says they love you and someone who actually loves you. Learning that difference was worth everything I went through to learn it. If I could go back and talk to that 19-year-old boy standing at the altar in St. Joseph's Catholic Church, promising to love Sarah Williams forever, what would I tell him? I'd tell him that the promises he's making are sacred, that the commitment he's entering into will test every part of who he is, that marriage isn't about finding someone perfect, but about becoming someone worthy of love, and then choosing that person every day for the rest of your life. I'd tell him that war will change him in ways he can't imagine, that coming home won't be the celebration he expects, that some people aren't strong enough to love someone through their darkest seasons. I'd tell him that Sarah Williams isn't that person, that she's beautiful and sweet and means well, but she doesn't have the depth of character necessary to love him the way he deserves to be loved. But I wouldn't tell him not to marry her, because marrying Sarah, losing Sarah, surviving the betrayal and finding Maria, that journey made me who I am today. It taught me lessons I needed to learn, showed me truths I needed to see, prepared me for the love I was really meant to have. If I hadn't married Sarah, I might have spent my whole life believing that fairy tale love was enough. I might never have learned the difference between someone who loves the idea of you and someone who loves you completely. If I hadn't been betrayed by Sarah, I might never have developed the wisdom to recognize real commitment when I found it in Maria. If I hadn't lost everything once, I might not appreciate what I have now with the depth and gratitude that makes every ordinary day feel like a miracle. Pain teaches you things that pleasure never can. Betrayal reveals truths that loyalty might never show you. Loss prepares you to recognize and value what's truly precious when you find it again. I wouldn't trade the pain I went through for anything, because it led me to everything I have now. That doesn't mean I'm grateful for Sarah's betrayal. I'm not grateful that she broke her promises. that she lied to me for months, that she destroyed something beautiful that we'd built together. But I'm grateful for what I learned from her betrayal. I'm grateful for who I became because of it. I'm grateful that it happened early enough in my life that I could recover, heal, and find something better. Some people don't get that chance. Some people waste decades in relationships with people who don't deserve their love, who can't return it with the same depth and consistency. I wasted 2 years, that's all. 2 years of my life invested in someone who wasn't worthy of that investment. The alternative was potentially wasting 20 years, 30 years, a lifetime with someone who would have betrayed me eventually anyway. Better to learn the truth at 28 than at 48 or 68. Better to discover someone's character when you still have time to build a life with someone whose character matches your own. That's what I have with Maria. Matched character, shared values, the same understanding of what love costs and what it's worth. We both believe that marriage is a sacred commitment, that promises are meant to be kept, that love is something you do every day regardless of how you feel. We both understand that building something lasting requires sacrifice, patience, and the willingness to choose each other, especially when choosing each other is difficult. We both know that the most beautiful things in life aren't easy, aren't convenient, aren't always comfortable, but they're worth every moment of difficulty because of what they create over time. That's why our love will survive whatever challenges come our way. Not because we're perfect people, but because we're imperfect people committed to loving each other perfectly. That's the kind of love worth waiting for, worth fighting for, worth building a life around. Let me tell you about the moment I knew Maria was different from Sarah. It was 6 months after we started dating. I hadn't told her I loved her yet because I was still learning to trust my own feelings, still afraid that what I felt for her was just loneliness, disguised as love. We were at a 4th of July barbecue at my parents' house. My extended family was there, aunts and uncles and cousins I hadn't seen since before I deployed to Iraq. Everyone was asking questions about the war, about Sarah, about how I was adjusting to civilian life. I was getting overwhelmed. The crowd, the noise, the constant questions about things I didn't want to talk about. It was triggering all my anxiety about being around large groups of people. I stepped outside to get some air, and Maria followed me. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just needed a minute." "Want to leave?" "No, these are your people now. I don't want to ruin your first time meeting my family." She looked at me like I'd said something crazy. "Michael, my job is to take care of you, not to impress your family. If you need to leave, we leave. If you need to stay but take breaks, we take breaks. Whatever you need, that's what we do." That's when I knew she was different. Sarah would have been embarrassed to leave early, would have been frustrated that I couldn't handle a simple family gathering, would have made me feel like my problems were an inconvenience to her. Maria made it clear that my well-being was her priority, that taking care of me wasn't a burden, but a privilege, that she was my partner in dealing with whatever challenges came up. We ended up staying for another hour, but every time I started to feel overwhelmed, Maria would quietly suggest we step outside for a few minutes. She made it look natural, like we were just getting some air or having a private conversation. Nobody else even noticed I was struggling. But Maria noticed, and she handled it without making a big deal about it, without embarrassing me, without making me feel broken or damaged. That night, after everyone had gone home, I told her I loved her. "I love you too," she said. "I've been waiting for you to figure that out." "How did you know before I did?" "Because you love me like someone who's learned the difference between loving someone and needing someone. You love me like someone who chooses to love me, not someone who has to love me." She was right. My love for Sarah had been based on need, on the desperate desire to be loved in return, on the fear of being alone. My love for Maria was based on choice. I didn't need her to complete me or fix me or make me feel worthy. I was already whole. I just wanted to share that wholeness with someone who could appreciate it and return it. That's the kind of love that lasts. Not desperate love, not needy love, but chosen love. The love between two complete people who decide to build something together that's even better than what they could build alone. Sarah and I were two incomplete people trying to use each other to fill the holes in ourselves. When that didn't work, when the pressure of deployment revealed those holes instead of filling them, the relationship collapsed. Maria and I are two complete people who've chosen to combine our strengths, to support each other's growth, to build something together that honors both of our individual worth while creating something new and beautiful. That's sustainable. That's lasting. That's the kind of love that survives decades, not just seasons. It took losing everything to learn the difference. But once I learned it, I couldn't unsee it. Now, when I meet other veterans who are struggling with relationships, who are dealing with betrayal or divorce, or the challenge of loving someone while dealing with PTSD, I share what I've learned. The right person will love you through your healing, not in spite of your wounds. The right person will see your scars as proof of your strength, not evidence of your brokenness. The right person will understand that loving a veteran means loving someone who's been changed by service, who carries experiences that can't be easily explained or forgotten, who might need extra patience and understanding while they adjust to civilian life. Sarah couldn't love that version of me. She loved the boy who left for war, not the man who came back from it. Maria loves the man I became because of war. She loves my strength and my vulnerability, my honor and my humanity, the parts of me that were forged in combat, and the parts that are still healing from it. She sees all of me and chooses all of me every day. That's what I want every veteran to find. Someone who doesn't just tolerate your service, but honors it. Someone who doesn't just accept your scars, but sees them as proof of your courage. Someone who understands that you didn't just serve your country. You were changed by serving your country, and that change is something to be proud of, not ashamed of. Too many veterans settle for relationships with people who see their service as a problem to be solved, their PTSD as a character flaw, their experiences as baggage they need to get over. That's not love. That's tolerance at best, and it's not enough. You deserve someone who sees your service as an honor, your struggles as evidence of your strength, your healing as a journey they're privileged to be part of. You deserve someone who loves the person you've become, not just the person you were before you served. That person exists. I found her in Maria. You can find yours too. But you have to believe you're worthy of that kind of love first. You have to understand that your service made you more valuable, not less valuable. That your experiences made you deeper, not more damaged. That your willingness to sacrifice for something bigger than yourself proves you have the capacity for the kind of love that's worth waiting for. I wish I could go back and tell that broken soldier sitting in an empty apartment reading a goodbye note from his wife that his story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. I wish I could tell him that the woman who betrayed him wasn't the love of his life. She was just the teacher who would prepare him to recognize real love when it showed up. I wish I could tell him that losing everything he thought he wanted would lead him to everything he actually needed. But maybe he needed to go through that darkness to appreciate the light that was coming. Maybe he needed to experience betrayal to understand loyalty. Maybe he needed to lose fake love to recognize real love. Pain has a purpose, even when we can't see it at the time. My pain taught me wisdom. It taught me discernment. It taught me the difference between someone who says they love you and someone who actually loves you. It taught me that I'm stronger than I knew, that I can survive having my heart broken and still have heart left to give to someone worthy of it. It taught me that some people aren't capable of the kind of love I have to offer, but that doesn't make my love less valuable. It just means I need to be more careful about who I offer it to. Most importantly, it taught me that I'm worthy of real love, not because I'm perfect, but because I'm someone who knows how to love completely, to sacrifice willingly, to keep promises consistently. Those qualities are rare. They're precious. They're worth protecting by only sharing them with people who can return them with equal depth and commitment. Sarah couldn't return that kind of love. Maria can and does every single day. That's the difference between settling and choosing wisely, between accepting whatever love is offered and waiting for the love you deserve. I could have married the first woman who showed interest in me after Sarah left. I could have settled for someone who was just willing to overlook my PTSD, my trust issues, my scars. Instead, I waited for someone who didn't just overlook those things, but loved me more because of them. I waited for someone who saw my experiences as evidence of my character, not obstacles to overcome. I waited for someone who wanted to build something lasting, not just find someone to pass time with. That waiting was worth it. That discernment saved me from wasting more years with the wrong person. It led me to Maria, to David, to the life I have now. That's better than any life I could have imagined when I was 19 and thought I knew what love looked like. If you're listening to this and you're in the middle of your own betrayal, your own heartbreak, your own discovery that someone you trusted wasn't worthy of that trust, I want you to know something. This is not the end of your story. This is the part where you learn what real love looks like by experiencing what fake love feels like. This is the part where you develop the wisdom to recognize genuine commitment when it shows up in your life. This is the part where you prove to yourself that you're stronger than you knew, that you can survive having your heart broken and still have love left to give to someone who deserves it. Don't rush the healing. Don't settle for the first person who pays attention to you. Don't lower your standards because you're afraid of being alone. Take time to understand what went wrong in your last relationship. Take time to heal from the betrayal. Take time to become the kind of person worthy of the love you want to receive. Then wait for someone who can match your commitment, your loyalty, your understanding of what real love costs and what it's worth. That person exists. They're out there looking for someone exactly like you. Someone who understands that love isn't just a feeling, but a choice. Not just a promise, but a daily commitment to keep that promise, regardless of circumstances. Don't settle for less than that. You're worth more than that. Let me tell you what I wish someone had told me when I was sitting in that empty apartment, wondering how my life had fallen apart so completely. Your worth isn't determined by how someone else treats you. Your value isn't diminished by someone else's inability to see it. Sarah's betrayal said nothing about me and everything about her. It revealed her character, not mine. It showed her capacity for commitment, not mine. I kept my promises. She broke hers. I stayed faithful. She chose infidelity. I honored our marriage even when it was difficult. She abandoned it when it became inconvenient. Her choices revealed who she was. My choices revealed who I was. I was someone worthy of real love. She wasn't someone capable of giving it. That's not a reflection on my worth. That's a mismatch of character. Understanding that difference changed everything for me. It allowed me to stop taking her betrayal personally and start seeing it as information about her character that I needed to know. It allowed me to stop wondering what was wrong with me and start understanding what was wrong with her. It allowed me to stop trying to change myself to be more worthy of her love and start recognizing that I was already worthy of better love than she could give. That shift in perspective was the beginning of my healing. Once I stopped blaming myself for her choices, I could start making better choices about who to trust with my heart. Once I stopped trying to be worthy of someone who couldn't recognize my worth, I could start looking for someone who already saw it clearly. Once I stopped accepting scraps of love from someone who couldn't love me fully, I could start expecting the kind of love I deserved from someone who was capable of giving it. That led me to Maria, to real love, to the life I have now. Block 48, 2,999 characters. But it also led me to something else equally important. It led me to self-respect. I respect myself now in ways I never did when I was married to Sarah. Not because I'm perfect, but because I know I'm someone who keeps his word, who honors his commitments, who loves completely even when that love isn't returned. I respect myself because I survived betrayal without becoming bitter. I survived heartbreak without closing my heart. I survived the destruction of everything I thought I wanted and used it to build something better. That kind of self-respect is invaluable. It changes how you walk through the world, how you approach relationships, how you make decisions about everything in your life. When you respect yourself, you don't accept disrespect from others. When you value yourself, you don't waste time with people who don't value you. When you know your worth, you don't settle for less than you deserve. Sarah's betrayal forced me to confront questions about my own worth that I'd never asked before. Am I someone worth waiting for? Am I someone worth keeping promises to? Am I someone worth loving completely? The answers to those questions weren't determined by whether Sarah thought I was worth those things. The answers were determined by whether I actually was those things, regardless of her ability to recognize them. I was worth waiting for. She just wasn't capable of waiting. I was worth keeping promises to. She just wasn't someone who kept promises when keeping them became difficult. I was worth loving completely. She just wasn't someone capable of complete love. Understanding that difference gave me back my power. Instead of being a victim of her betrayal, I became someone who had information about her character that I could use to make better decisions. Instead of being broken by her rejection, I became someone who was grateful to discover her limitations before I wasted more time with her. Instead of being destroyed by her betrayal, I became someone who was prepared to recognize and value real commitment when I found it. That's the gift hidden inside betrayal, if you're willing to look for it. It's not a gift you asked for, and it's not one you'd choose if you had other options. But it's a gift nonetheless. The gift of clarity about other people's character. The gift of understanding your own worth regardless of how others treat you. The gift of wisdom about what real love looks like and what fake love feels like. Those gifts prepared me for Maria in ways that a lifetime of easy love never could have. If I'd never been betrayed, I might have taken Maria's loyalty for granted. I might never have fully appreciated her commitment to our marriage, her faithfulness during difficult times, her willingness to love me through my healing process. If I'd never experienced fake love, I might not have recognized real love when it showed up in my life. If I'd never had my heart broken by someone incapable of deep love, I might not have valued finding someone who could love me with the depth and consistency I deserved. Sarah's betrayal didn't just end one relationship. It prepared me for a better relationship. It taught me lessons I needed to learn, showed me truths I needed to see, gave me wisdom I needed to have. I wouldn't choose that pain again, but I wouldn't trade what I learned from it either. That's what I want you to remember if you're going through your own betrayal right now. This isn't just an ending, It's also a beginning, an ending of one chapter and the beginning of a better one, an ending of accepting less than you deserve and the beginning of expecting what you're worth, an ending of loving someone incapable of returning that love, and the beginning of finding someone who can love you the way you deserve to be loved. The beginning of understanding that you're not just worthy of love, but worthy of real love. The kind that doesn't break under pressure, doesn't disappear during difficult times, doesn't come with conditions and exceptions. The kind that chooses you every day, especially when choosing you requires sacrifice. The kind that keeps promises when keeping them is hard, stays faithful when faithfulness is tested, builds something lasting instead of looking for the easy way out. That kind of love exists. I have it with Maria. David sees it every day and will grow up knowing what it looks like. You can have it too. But first, you have to believe you deserve it. You have to understand that someone else's inability to give you that kind of love doesn't mean you're not worthy of receiving it. You have to stop accepting less and start expecting more. Stop settling for people who love you conditionally and start looking for someone who can love you completely. Stop making excuses for people who break their promises and start valuing people who keep their word, regardless of circumstances. That's not asking too much. That's asking for what love actually is, not what some people pretend it is when they want the benefits of being loved without the responsibility of loving in return. Real love is a mutual exchange between two people who understand what it costs and are willing to pay that price every single day. Anything less than that isn't real love. It's just two people using each other for companionship, convenience, or comfort until something better comes along. Sarah used me for the status of being married to a soldier, the sympathy of being a military wife, the financial support of my military pay. When those benefits were no longer worth the cost of actually being married to me, she moved on to someone who could give her what she wanted without requiring the same level of commitment. That's not love. That's a transaction. Real love isn't transactional. It's not about what you can get from someone else. It's about what you can give to someone else, what you can build together, what you can create that's bigger and better than what either of you could create alone. That's what Maria and I have. We're not using each other. We're building together. We're creating a life, a family, a legacy of love that will outlast both of us. Our love makes both of us better people. It challenges us to grow, to sacrifice, to become the best versions of ourselves, not for our own benefit, but for each other's. That's sustainable. That's lasting. That's the kind of love that survives decades of marriage, multiple deployments, job losses, health problems, and all the other challenges that test couples over the course of a lifetime. Sarah and I didn't have that. We had two people trying to use each other to meet our individual needs. When my needs became too difficult for her to meet, she found someone else to meet them. That's why I can tell you with complete confidence that her marriage to Brad Morrison won't last forever. Because it's built on the same foundation mine was built on: convenience, comfort, and the path of least resistance. When life stops being convenient and comfortable for them, when loving each other starts requiring real sacrifice, they'll discover what I discovered: that you can't build something lasting on a foundation of avoiding difficulty. But that's not my problem anymore. That's their lesson to learn. My lesson was learning the difference between someone who can love me through easy times and someone who can love me through all times. Maria can love me through all times. She's proven that over and over again, not just during my healing from PTSD, but through everyday challenges, everyday conflicts, everyday opportunities to choose each other when choosing each other isn't the easiest option. That's why I can promise you that if I had to deploy again tomorrow, she'd be there when I came home. Not because she's perfect, but because she's committed. Not because loving me is easy, but because she's chosen to love me regardless of whether it's easy or hard. That's the kind of person you're looking for. That's the kind of person worth waiting for. That's the kind of person worth building a life with. Don't settle for less. Don't let loneliness make you desperate. Don't let fear of being alone make you accept someone who can only love you when it's convenient for them. Take time to heal. Take time to understand what went wrong in your last relationship. Take time to become the kind of person worthy of real love. Then wait for someone who can match your commitment, your loyalty, your understanding of what love actually requires. That waiting period isn't wasted time, it's preparation time. Time to develop the wisdom to recognize real love when it shows up. Time to build the strength to maintain that love once you find it. Time to become someone worthy of the kind of love you want to receive. I used my waiting period to work on myself, to heal from the trauma of war and the trauma of betrayal, to learn what I needed in a partner and what I had to offer as a partner, to develop the emotional maturity to love someone without needing them to complete me, to choose someone without being desperate for their validation. That work prepared me to recognize Maria when she showed up in my life. It prepared me to appreciate her loyalty, to value her commitment, to return her love with the same depth and consistency. Without that preparation, I might have missed her. I might have been so focused on trying to heal from Sarah's betrayal that I couldn't see the opportunity for real love that was right in front of me. Or I might have brought so much baggage from my first marriage into my second that I would have sabotaged it before it had a chance to grow. The work I did during my healing period made our love possible. That's what I want for you. I want you to use this painful period of your life as preparation for the love you deserve. I want you to heal completely, not just partially. I want you to understand what went wrong in your last relationship so you don't repeat the same mistakes. I want you to develop the wisdom to recognize real commitment when you see it and the strength to return it with the same depth and consistency. Most importantly, I want you to understand your own worth so completely that you never again accept less than you deserve from someone else. You are worthy of real love, the kind that doesn't break under pressure, doesn't disappear during difficult times, doesn't come with conditions and exceptions. You are worthy of someone who will choose you every day, especially when choosing you requires sacrifice. You are worthy of someone who keeps promises when keeping them is hard, stays faithful when faithfulness is tested, builds something lasting instead of looking for the easy way out. That person exists. They're out there looking for someone exactly like you, someone who understands what real love costs and is willing to pay that price. Don't settle for less. Don't let fear or loneliness or desperation make you accept someone who can only love you when it's convenient for them. Wait for someone who can love you through all seasons, all challenges, all the ordinary days and extraordinary days that make up a lifetime together. My name is Michael Rodriguez. I served my country with honor. I survived war and betrayal and heartbreak. I found real love with someone worthy of it. Tomorrow, I'll tell you about Captain James Sullivan, the firefighter who saved lives for 20 years, only to discover that his wife had been living a double life with the man next door. But today, remember this. Your story doesn't end with someone else's betrayal. That's just the end of one chapter. The next chapter is up to you. Make it a story worth telling. If this touched your heart, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to know that healing is possible, that real love exists, that their best days are still ahead of them. Until next time, keep building something beautiful. You're worth it.